afternoon. Happy Friday, everyone. I am your host, Robert Karpelis, and I am joined today, but you're not Dom.
I'm close, though. I'm close. I have the same phonetic name, all right? I'm bald. I have some facial hair, all right? I've some vague similarities. I'm Dollar Store Dominic D'Angelo. No, I'm
Dollar
Kevin
Store,
Kellum.
yes. Kevin Kellum is here. Dime Store Dominic D'Angelo. The key difference is when we talk.
I gave myself $1. You got me down to a dime there, Robert.
It's inflation, man. I don't know what to tell you. This is where we are in 2024. Yeah, we're going to be talking. Dom, I see put the headline up there earlier. SummerFest 2024. It would be funny, except for the fact that Dom consistently screws up the name of this show, the other shows that we produce and do. And very often the company that Triple H is responsible for booking, he occasionally drops a W. So I'm hoping, Kevin, you're gonna be spot on for this. Appreciate you sitting in.
I'm so pumped for WWF WrestleFest this weekend in Cleveland, Ohio.
Whoa. We're not allowed to use the WWF. That physically that hurts me.
Get the F out, Robert.
Get the F
out.
The amount of time that I had to spend at WWE removing the scratch logo, removing WWF from old footage, it's like I still have PTSD from it. But we've got a hell of a show to talk about today. We're going to talk about a massive SmackDown tonight. We're going to talk SummerSlam and a little bit of AEW news because they just can't help themselves.
They have some good news, and then they immediately have some bad news.
Yes, they are the kings of dropping the ball. Let's start with them because we got a lot of stuff.
It is the big story breaking this morning. Yeah,
it is the big story breaking this morning. Dr. Britt Baker, DDS, who is a legit dentist, who is a professional, who is an adult, has been
shoot dentist
in the Orlando area. And if you've been to the Winter Park, Orlando area, you know she is making a fortune off of those people. I love my state. We're full of some of the best and brightest, but
you gotta go where the work is.
Apparently, she has been suspended for 2 weeks because of a backstage altercation with Alicia Atout, who is MJF's girlfriend, who has been brought in as a backstage commentator. The details are a little sketchy at the moment, but what it sounds like is there were some comments that Britt made to Alicia about Max. They got back to Max. This is escalated. This is clearly an episode of Saved by the Bell. And for the second year in a row, All In is built on a Native American burial ground, and it is cursed and haunted. Britt is suspended for 2 weeks. Mercedes Moné did mention this during her promo, but her promos tend to be white noise and we tune them out. That on screen, the Bucks had suspended her, but she should be back in time for All In. But Kevin, first thoughts upon hearing this?
I'm just on the surface, like the initial reaction. We'll get into what's actually being reported and kind of the details about it, which are still very vague. It's one of those things, but it just seems like it's one or two steps forward and then just a big jump back for them in terms of just perceptional things like that Shane McMahon story earlier this week really rocked the boat. Like, I'm over at Sportskeeda Wrestling and I was supposed to be on Sirius XM to premiere our new, roll out our new trivia game. We have a daily trivia game called Brainbuster. We have it at sportskeeda.com. A lot of work has been put into it. We're excited, but we know the news cycle. So I'm supposed to go on Sirius XM, bust it open, big show, right? And I get told about this story, and then the rest of my day is just trying to figure out what Shane McMahon and Tony Khan were talking about. And there was a lot of speculation about that. A McMahon and AEW, wow, what a wild story. A lot of attention switching over to them in a big week for WWE. If AEW planned this, good on them. You were at WWE when stories were like, all right, we're going to let this one get out. We want to see what people think of it, right?
Sure.
So I had to think that. But for this is something you absolutely don't want out, especially when people were kind of like, oh, wow, what are they? They're trying to play a big move here. This is just more of the same dysfunctional stuff backstage. It just sounds so unnecessary and negative.
What's the most troubling for this for me is Britt Baker in a previous iteration was sort of responsible for a lot of, or at least involved in, I don't want to say necessarily responsible for, involved in a lot of the toxicity that was going on in the women's division. And yesterday on this show, we were talking about a lot of the improvements that have gone on in the AEW women's division. And it felt like maybe we're starting to put it together.
It took 24 hours for you to regret that statement.
It's my fault yesterday because I said nice things about AEW. I was complimentary and praiseworthy of the women's division. And then this happened. And Britt has been such a divisive figure. Stay in your locker room. Don't comment on anything and get to the biggest pay-per-view that they have coming up in a few weeks. And she's in one of those marquee matches. And now it's going to be colored by this suspension.
And is it going to, this is a comeback for her too. She came back from a very serious medical issue, like a near kind of like mini stroke type situation. I'm sorry, I don't know the exact terminology for it, but a very, very scary situation. And AEW trusted her enough as a big name to not just bring her back, but we're going to put you in a stadium in the biggest non-WWE wrestling show this year against the big name that we've paid a lot of money to come over for. You're our franchise player. We're really going to cement Mercedes Moné as a big star, and we're really going to reintroduce you after this serious medical problem. And she's back. Big investment in like real estate on television to bring up this story. Then to have this happen for somebody who's they're an AEW original, and for lack of a better phrase in terms of branding, that's not good. It's just not good. And I want to know how AEW can steer the ship here, because they've had too many of these issues with too much interpersonal stuff that it just makes me question how come there had to be issues like this all the time in WWE, but we never heard about it. So another thing is like, we're in the reporting side. We're going to talk about it. We're going to speculate it. People are going to want to know about it. If we heard about this at 10 years down the road, it wouldn't matter. It's okay. It'd be interesting, but we're hearing about this like as it happens. So that it makes a way different perception of them. And then the Warner Brothers thing, which I assume at some point we can talk about too. But I mean, like, it just makes you question a lot of things.
Sure. So the strange thing about this was AEW HR intervened after getting this report of what happened, and they immediately suspended Britt Baker for 2 weeks. So they're trying to show that they've learned from what happened in the past when they didn't intervene in the Hangman situation with CM Punk, when they didn't intervene in the Jack Perry situation with CM Punk, when they didn't initially intervene with Sammy Guevara repeated situations, it put them in a real bad position. So on the one hand, I praise AEW for taking what feels like immediate and decisive action based on whatever occurred. Yeah. But at the same time, to your point, Kevin, why is this so pervasive? Like they should be adults in WWE world. These things do happen. There's stuff that boils up and then it kind of goes away quickly because they all just want to make money. And All In is a real opportunity for them to make money. And for this to happen so close to that show takes the eye off the prize. And if I'm Tony Khan, I'm embarrassed to have to talk to Mercedes Moné, who came over from a major promotion, and say, hey, here's what's going on with your opponent at this massive pay-per-view.
Else you have to change television. You know that as a writer. They had to change TV to make this work.
It worked out for Camille. Camille got a match, and Mercedes had to cut a small promo. And the storyline of the Bucks suspending her because of her attack, like, all right, they kind of lucked into it a little bit, but it's not a great look. It's not a great situation, and it's gonna be talked about even more now because, to your point, it's SummerSlam weekend. It's SummerSlam weekend. So all of the wrestling reporter world are all together. Dom is not here right now because he's in Cleveland, literally at the WWE press events. So everyone's going to be sitting around, and when they're not talking about, holy crap, what an amazing SummerSlam this is going to be, they're going to be talking about what is going on in AEW.
And also how many of these, and everyone's like, oh, it's just the Punk one, right? No, there's a lot of them. There's a handful of these with different people at all different levels of the card, some more prominent, some from WWE, some people that are AEW originals. There was issues like multiple times with Sammy Guevara, who's still on the shelf, and we don't know when he's coming back.
Well, Sammy Guevara, spoiler alert of non-spoiler words, he did come back at the Ring of Honor taping.
Oh,
That
He's
was
at Ring
his
of
return
Honor.
from his suspension for almost killing Jeff Hardy. They used him at the Ring of Honor tapings. If that was a spoiler to you, I sincerely apologize for the 11 people that subscribe to Honor Club.
I feel bad about that. That's
Yes.
we could do a different show on
When you get your Ring of Honor VHS tape in the
Oh,
mail, because I think that's how it works. It's the old bicycle system. You'll get a VHS tape, pop it in, and be like, "Oh, look, Sammy Guevara is there." But
Delirious delivers it to you in the mask. He comes around in a mask, dressed like a mailman, and gives it to you.
I wouldn't be mad about that. But then you'd realize kind of how short Delirious is. Nice guy, really like him. Please don't kill me. But it's funny too, because one of the other folks that had a major issue was Adam Copeland when he comes over from WWE, and then the whole Ricky Starks thing. It's continuing to there be more smoke to the fire of why are there always these questions when contracts are coming up? What Penta is going to do, what Phoenix is going to do. It's not an immediate slam dunk. Yeah, these guys are staying. It's almost like you're surprised when you see Buddy Murphy sticking around, and you're like, wow, that becomes a bigger story than it should. That a guy didn't leave the company that he's in.
Mm-hmm. And then you have to start thinking about these things when you talk about contracts coming up. I knew 2024 was a big year for a lot of deals coming up that people signed in WWE in 2019. But if you kind of look at those deals coming together, people are either not choosing to sign right away with WWE or waiting out for more money, or they're not going to AEW. They're trying to see if they can work the independents. That's the word I've heard. There's some people that could get out of a WWE and they're not rushing to sign with All Elite Wrestling. And I don't know if this is indicative of that. Probably you would have more insight on that, Robert. But obviously, Tony Khan is still probably the other richest guy in wrestling outside of WWE. So people are still going to get paid, and especially if they get the TV deal done. I don't know. It just makes me question a lot, and there's so many talented people that are wise and smart that manage talent in AEW, but I just don't know why they can't get away from this stuff. Someone's got to get everybody together and just really lay into them and be like, this is just unacceptable. This is how people see us. This is the perception they have. Even our diehard fans who are sticking with this wall, some of that tribalism stuff is people taking screenshots of our half-filled house, whatever, doesn't matter. The people that are riding with us, they're starting to think this now too, and you had to rewrite television because you couldn't do this. I like Britt Baker. I've interviewed Britt Baker. I think she's a great wrestler. It isn't a big deal that she said it. It's just the narrative is now, the impact of that is way bigger because these stories are like this. If this was just an own incident, it wouldn't be that big of a deal.
It's that coupled with, obviously the ratings took a significant hit this week. Their immediate pivot was, well, people are watching the Olympics. That to me doesn't hold as much water, in part because the Olympics are not live here when they're airing in prime time. It aired earlier in the day. I don't know how many people are diehard Olympic fans that are diehard wrestling that are diehard wrestling fans and are going to choose the Olympics over that. Yeah. And given that the last 2 weeks AEW has given you 2 pay-per-views for free 2 weeks in a row, and it didn't translate into a bigger number this week, has to be a concern when the Warner Discovery deal, Penn has not yet been put to paper. They kept saying there was potentially an agreement in principle.
We're at the red zone. That was the term.
We're in the red zone, and it sounds like somebody fumbled the ball this close to the end. And I talked about that before, guys. As a lawyer, it's like I've had plenty of agreements in principle, and then when it comes time to materializing it, it doesn't necessarily happen. The exclusivity window is closing, or it's already closed. I haven't checked exactly what it is.
Fightful has reported it through a Warner Brothers Discovery source that exclusivity has closed. It doesn't indicate that the deal is off, right? But just that exclusivity is closed, meaning they would be allowed to go talk to another media company if they wanted to.
Which is a risky proposition, by the way, because if you start reaching out to other folks and the deals that they're willing to give you are significantly lower, and I fully respect NDAs. Me and my good buddy Vince McMahon, best boss I've ever had, both love and respect non-disclosure agreements. That being said,
on the screen
in business, occasionally the business terms, even though there's an NDA, they get out. So if they're having conversations with other media entities, someone somewhere might let it slip and say, oh, here's what X is offering. Here's what, I didn't mean Twitter, but like X is X, Y, and Z. And that can hurt their negotiating power with Warner Discovery a little bit. So this has got to be a very tenuous week for Tony. And it looks, believe it or not, more and more like bringing in Shane McMahon behind the scenes would be the smart decision, to have an adult in the room who has fielded a lot of these issues while in WWF, before they were a publicly traded company, as they became one, through the Attitude Era. He is a grown up in the room that people are going to listen to more than they may listen to the Young Bucks.
Yeah. Or Tony. Or even Tony.
No one's listening to Tony. Tony's
no, but I mean, they're gonna listen to Tony because he's writing the checks, right?
There's a difference between listening to and valuing what they're saying.
Okay. And also I'm not someone who writes off Tony, because he's the one who got this thing going and put it in a place where it could be the challenger brand, which I think is a better term of describing it than competition at the moment.
Sure.
But if they're in a position where situations like this could affect that deal, am I wrong? Is this something where they could still get a deal, but hey, we don't want issues like this anymore? Is that something where Warner Brothers would see all this stuff and say, like, hey, we don't want this like this? Does that step in? Have you ever, from your experience dealing with people in the wrestling business as a lawyer, do media partners, do business partners come in and be like, hey, what's the deal with this interpersonal issue or something like that? Do they bring that to the table in a negative way? Like they're not happy with it?
Where it becomes problematic is if they hear about it at all. The media entities, the larger, they're not paying a lot of attention. I talked about this back when TKO first went public, and people were surprised that Vince was standing there in Wall Street with his hands up, like on the stage. And I said, because a lot of investors are not overly sophisticated, and when they hear WWE, the only thing they think of is they know Vince McMahon. The top line. So if this Britt Baker story somehow finds its way in front of someone at Warner Discovery, that's when it becomes bad. That's why David Zaslav, called CM Punk a billion-dollar talent, because he knew who that guy was. He didn't know who a lot of the other folks were. If this Britt story combined with low ratings becomes a new narrative before something's been signed, it's going to show some volatility, and they're going to step in and say, hey, Tony, we get what you've built. Where are you taking this going forward in the next 3, 5, 10 years, especially when you look at the other channel and it's like Triple H has a monkey's paw, and every wish he makes expands and expands and expands, and they can kind of do no wrong right now.
So they're trying to seal down this deal, and I know you've talked about it a lot. I don't know if it's on the docket today, but I got to know, what's the best deal they can get right now? Because I don't know if it's the same arrangement that they have right now. I'm not saying it's a bad one, but is it streaming? Is it one less show? Is it pay-per-views on Max? What is that? How would you see that breakdown, just surface level, one page? What would it be?
So because they're not publicly traded, it comes down to the tolerance that Tony and Shad have for how much money they're willing to lose.
Yeah.
So I think ideally for him being Tony, getting a streaming deal where AEW is integrated within the larger Max platform, where people can get access to those pay-per-views, because they do strong pay-per-view numbers. They have a loyal number, but it is a pretty strong number. But it's very hard to consistently ask wrestling fans to spend $50, $60 on these shows. You're doing 7, 8 a year when
they've been conditioned to the streaming service, right?
Your competition is charging you $5 for Peacock. Yeah. You put those on Max. You have the Ring of Honor library, which obviously has value. You get Ring of Honor as a streaming show onto Max. You have a show on TBS, a show on TNT. I've been saying for a long time, I think the other piece that they need to look at for Warner Discovery that they have not is creating a Saturday morning show for Cartoon Network. They need to get a younger audience.
Way younger. I was at AEW Dynamite a month ago, right? And it was a good show. Very good show. Bryan Danielson, Pac, some great matches. But the one thing I didn't see, and this feels weird as a single guy my age, I love wrestling. I saw too many people that are like me there. I saw some women. I would say that AEW has an edge where I think they could get a lot of women to watch the show, but WWE hasn't beat on the women front because they have bigger female stars. They have male stars that women want to see. And they have a variety. There's kids there. Cody Rhodes is a superhero, to kids. He's a Captain America. They have the people they can attach themselves to, and people that are also young teenagers, early 20-somethings, that are college-age people. WWE's kind of found a way to find a little box. Dominic, Liv, and Rhea is probably the biggest Gen Z storyline in wrestling right now. And
absolutely. I said there was an argument that could main event
like
SummerSlam.
Yeah. And I know a lot of people who are asking me about that storyline who just watch soap operas or were total divas fans and stuff like that. I don't see those conversation points with AEW. I don't see a casual fan saying, oh, they should know that Bryan Danielson's going to have a big match and it might be his last title shot. They don't talk about it the same way. I feel like I'm getting TNA 2012 vibes, where it's like, hey, we have a great roster, we have great talent, we have big names, but it just doesn't click past 7 on the 1 to 10 scale. It'll get there, near it, but it won't push over in some point. And that isn't a shot at the brand. It's just the reality of the circumstance. And there's portions of the audience that I think they're missing. This is a great idea. There is not enough involvement for children to just start watching the show and say, my new favorite wrestler is Orange Cassidy, or a Pac or something like that.
They left so much money on the table with Orange. But they left a lot of money on the table with Phoenix, with the mask. And I think Luchasaurus as a baby face was someone they should have been marketing. They had the pieces to draw younger fans in. And when they do get connected and they do love what they're seeing, they have one of the best villains in the history of wrestling with MJF. He is a guy that kids can know to hate pretty easily right off the bat.
Anyone.
And Ospreay is I said this yesterday, he's a golden retriever come to life. Like there's such an infectious joy to him that I think kids are going to gravitate to him as being a true hero. They just don't have a way to reach them. And you need some sort of concerted effort to try to go after a younger demographic so that you get them coming forward. The AEW fan base right now are a lot of people who grew up. I mean, Tony's my age, so we both grew up, ECW fans and the Attitude Era and all that. But that post era, the thing that a lot of people looked down on was John Cena. But John Cena hooked a younger audience in ways that nobody else could. Sold merchandise out the wazoo, and they need those extra revenue streams because a lot of those wrestlers that are not in AEW are saying, yeah, I can get potentially guaranteed money in a deal. However, merchandise, video games, toys, all those little ancillaries, AEW can't touch with the machine that WWE has built. They can't touch the machine Matt Cardona built on his own. And that's what these people see.
Wow, that's a line to say, And I've had conversations with Matt. I've interviewed Matt a handful of times. I'm still shocked he's not signed by a major company. But
I don't think he wants to be quite. But I think part of him might, but I think part of him understands I'm making money on my own. I'm making a brand on my own.
I think he would want to be an executive before he'd want to be a wrestler.
I would absolutely see him as as an executive. I think there's a lot of value to what Cardona brings to the table across the board. But this is the SummerSlam preview edition of Rumor and Innuendo. Look, we usually go 30 minutes. We may go a couple minutes longer here today because there was a lot of meat on the bone because of our friends. Please, this is great. This is what we do here, guys. We get a chance to dig in.
I love talking to a lawyer who's wearing a kayfabe shirt. I had to ask all the right questions.
Well, this is my kayfabe shirt available now on Pro Wrestling Tees that I designed because years ago I saw that coexist bumper sticker, and I'm like, how is that not a wrestling thing? And it was very hard because when I first made this, there was no AEW, so the A is the Lucha Underground A, and the B is Bullet Club, because there was no B in a wrestling company, which was very, very frustrating. But SummerSlam, so the SmackDown show tonight has 2 matches that in a different world would have probably been on the card either as a dark match or as a main card show. Main card show was a great expression right there. But the first is, Bianca and Jade taking on Alba Fire and Isla Dawn. Obviously, they called an audible at Clash at the Castle to put the women's tag titles on Isla and Alba. However, there are no babyface tag teams who are ready to go. No. It kind of feels like this is we're going to course correct. We're going to put the titles back on Bianca and Jade and get a chance to use them on Raw and SmackDown going forward.
I think so too. I think with Bianca and especially with Jade, cooled off a little bit. And some people think they'll build to a storyline with them eventually doing a one-on-one match. And you do the tag team breaking up. It's a dance we've seen before, but when you do those dances we've seen before, and I'll mention this with somebody else who everyone thinks is showing up on Saturday, is I don't think you need to rush it. With WWE, this is a real thick book, and you don't need to do the chapter ending big moments right away. If you get the belts back on them and you do it, I heard some people say, they're going to do the breakup now.
Kevin, titles. A belt is what holds up your pants.
Excuse me. Titles.
God damn it, Dom. Sorry, force a habit.
I heard some people already saying, this is where they break them up. This is where they break up the tag team right away. I was like, no, not yet. You have a lot of time. If we're doing a WrestleMania match with Jade and Bianca, think of the time. There's a lot of time to get there before we have to do that, right? So I agree with you. Get the belts back on them.
Get the titles back on them, and then on the men's side, it's all right. It's DIY versus a version of the false flag bloodline. This is Jacob Fatu and Tama Tonga, because I guess they don't trust Tonga Loa to walk down to the ring without falling. So this is where we're at. I love this storyline because it continues this idea that Solo, who is the more erratic tribal chief, he's the more unpredictable one, also has the understanding of when you have the gold, when you have the titles, that puts you in a position of power. And I don't see a situation in which DIY is retaining these tag titles. I think you need that confidence going into SummerSlam that, oh man, we're building up a legitimate dynasty.
Yeah, and it's also legitimacy. I think under Triple H, you can see this across the board, not with every championship, got it right, but championships are upper. If you have a championship, you are better than. You are held in a higher regard. They've created that understanding. They've reinvested in that fundamental thing that I think got lost in past years. And even with your mid-card championships, we're feeling this with some other matches that are going to be in the card for Saturday. And I agree with them. And I do think this sets up some things to legitimize, even for some fans. They're the Samoans, they're the bloodline, they're legit. No, I think you win titles, you become more legitimate in WWE. And this kind of really cements Fatu and the crew there to become the new foundation, and it sets them up for some big things in the future. And also DIY can win those belts again in the future. I don't think this hurts them as much as people might think.
Doesn't hurt them as much as it hurts me that you continue to say belts. It's fine. This is we've dropped the WWF, we've dropped the belt. The only thing he hasn't done is break our swearing rule, unlike Marcus D'Angelo when he was on, and within the first 10 seconds throwing out an F-bomb. And guys, if you want to ensure that your lady is going to be using some language that we can't say here on Rumor Innuendo, let's talk about our next sponsor, because our next sponsor needs no introduction. You've seen the ads. You've heard them talk about it a million times, and I bet there's a big part of you, pun intended, that wants to try it. What am I talking about? Blue Chew. That's right. This isn't your grandpa's blue pill. This is the one, the OG chewable tablet for better sex. Blue Chew is a unique online service that delivers the same active ingredients as Viagra, Cialis, and Levitra, but at a fraction of the cost and in chewable form. The process is simple. Sign up at BlueChew.com, consult with one of their licensed medical providers, and once you're approved, you'll receive your prescription within days. Blue Chew tablets are made in the USA and prepared and shipped directly to your door. The best part, it's all done online. No visits to the doctor's office, no awkward conversations, and no waiting in line at the pharmacy. You can take them anytime, day or night, so you can plan ahead or be ready whenever an opportunity arises. Blue Chew wants to help you have better sex. Discover your options at BlueChew.com. Kevin keeps talking about belts, and guys, if you want to make sure your girl's taking your belt off, Blue Chew wants to make the entire country rock hard. They told me that's their mission. They will not stop until every man is bricked up like a brick house, till every tent is pitched, till every rod is raised. Discover your options at BlueChew.com. This SummerSlam weekend, you want to make it through the 3-hour pre-show, Blue Chew is going to help you. And we've got a special deal for our listeners. Try Blue Chew free when you use our promo code RUMOR at checkout. Just pay $5 shipping. That's BlueChew.com, promo code RUMOR. to receive your first month free. Visit BlueChew.com for more details and important safety information. And we thank Blue Chew for sponsoring this extra large edition of Rumor and Innuendo. That's what you guys are here for. But also, we're going to talk a little SummerFest, as my good close personal friend Jeremy Piven would say. Look, if I didn't listen to him about Hair Club for Men, I'm not listening to him for this. But
I didn't.
It looks good. It works.
Yeah, I'm wearing it. Yeah.
7-match card. The surprising thing about this SummerSlam show, in a good way, is every match on here has been built a long time ago. You've had a lot of runway, and they're all interpersonal stories. And I think that's what makes this so compelling, so fun. I don't think it's going to be, as Dan St. Germain had said to me, it's like, this isn't going to be a bunch of 5-star matches, but it's going to be a lot of emotionally satisfying matches. And in wrestling, sometimes that does matter, Kevin.
It totally matters. And I think that's the edge that WWE has reintroduced to the audience, is that they can compel you to care about characters. And by virtue of that, they can get you to care about the consequence and the stakes of a match. And will it be a 5-star match? The weird thing is WWE can put on 5-star shows, and they don't need 5-star matches, which maybe for you on the creative side of things is compelling. But there's some really good stuff. Punk and Drew has been built up since January. They kept Punk is a very interesting character when he couldn't wrestle, and you add Seth Rollins to it. That's super compelling. I don't know what's going to happen, and all I do is talk about wrestling 24/7. I don't know what's going to happen. I kind of have some idea, but I don't know for sure. There isn't very much on this card outside, especially the biggest matches near the top of it, the main matches, that feels 100% predictable. They got you asking the right questions. They got the most casual and most diehard fans saying, what's going to happen? And I need to see it. And isn't that any big wrestling show? This is how dialed in they are on the storytelling altogether. And I just credit to Triple H and the creative team. They really, I think, steered the ship in the right direction.
I think they're cooking with gas. We'll get a little predictions here, since no one knows 100% for sure what's going to happen. But I think some of these kind of we do, guys. But hey, it's part of the intrigue. It's part of the fun. And as I have said repeatedly, just because something happens may seem predictable, it's because it was an earned moment in the storyline. Yeah, that's okay. You don't want the Vince Russo swerve, bro, on every single match. You want to be able to say, hey, this was an emotionally satisfying climax. And guys, nope, sorry, I urged you to lose you. We'll start with
you can't help yourself.
It happened. The scariest thing, I was on a meeting for work, and I saw the Blue Chew segue, and I was like, my brain was like so programmed for it that I almost transitioned to a Blue Chew segue.
The Blue Chew reads are, when you're excited for a commercial, this is me as a radio guy too, when you're excited for a commercial to come on and you sing along with the jingle, the people that buy that ad say, that's what I want. I don't want you to ignore it. So good on Blue Chew for giving us a great platform for crotchal humor on a daily basis.
This is how you know Blue Chew is great. The fact that Conrad Thompson can talk about having sex and people still buy Blue Chew. We love Conrad. We are here on the Ad Free Shows Network. But
Roast of Conrad Thompson, one of my favorite things I've ever seen at a wrestling convention, by the way. One of the best.
Oh, yeah. If you go back in the archives for Working Stiff, which used to be Wrestle Roasts, our roast of Conrad Thompson is just wow. And he loved it, and that's what makes him so great. He's a lot of fun. All right, I'm sick of. We don't have enough time to kiss Conrad.
SummerSlam.
That could take months.
Yeah,
literally months. You talked about CM Punk and Drew. That one's the one that has, I think, the biggest question marks to it. Seth Rollins being added on there feels like an insurance policy, because they know CM Punk is a little fragile, and this is his first singles match in WWE in over a decade. Yeah. So having Seth there as the very annoying smoke and mirrors may help him a little bit. What do you see happening here?
Well, there's smoke and mirrors here. They got me thinking about something else. Punk and Drew, though, like I said, this is a real test for Punk. I think there's a real appeal about him having this first real singles match on TV for WWE, but I don't think it's a match he needs to win. Story is more important than a match result, an immediate payoff. The payoff, I think, is still to come with this storyline. The payoff, I guess, here is we finally get to see them fight in a full-on match, not just like a physical confrontation, but like a match. Rollins, though, adds such a a weird factor to this. I see this going to another match, maybe a Hell in a Cell issue because it's such a personal issue between Drew and Punk right now, but Rollins as well. I interviewed Seth Rollins in 2019 when, Punk wasn't even back in the business. He was talking mad-ish. He wanted this match. And that was a real life thing that's become now a scripted thing that's very beneficial to WWE. A Punk Rollins match is still available. But we also got to see if we can get Punk to be the CM Punk people want him to be physically again. And I think he's capable of that. I really, really do. I do think he's highly, highly motivated. He wants to prove to people on the other side of the coin here, you are wrong. You are wrong to play that game with me. You are wrong to do this. And if he can do that, he's really gonna shut some people up. And I think he's capable of that. I think he's a smarter guy than people think he is in terms of what he can do physically. He's not going to do things in the ring that he can't do. And he's also very good at pacing. I think he's one of those guys who's deceptively good at pulling a punch at the right time and letting things simmer and let the crowd get into it. And I know some people say, oh, you're working too fast. Punk doesn't have to work fast. He has to work smart. And I think Drew's the perfect guy for him to work with. But I think Drew gets this win in some dusty way with Seth Rollins involved. And we get these guys at a Hell in a Cell, possibly at Bad Blood.
Yeah, I think that you can't let Drew get a satisfying win here. This isn't going to be Drew getting the revenge that he wants. This also isn't going to be Drew once again slipping on a banana peel and Punk beats him. I've been talking about this with some folks and thinking about it. And honestly, I think that the thing that you need to play into, because there's so much realism here, is the idea that Punk has been so injury prone that you need to put it on Seth that maybe this is a medical stoppage, that Seth is put in a position where he has to stop the match and Punk's going to be pissed. Drew's not going to be satisfied. And you have a way to kind of get out of this match and get to the next one. All I would say is no matter what it is, be prepared to be pissed off at whatever the finish is. You're not going to be thrilled, and that's okay.
Yeah, exactly, Robert. You have this. People are like, that's so wrong. They get me so mad. You're supposed to care, right? You're supposed to care. There's too many fans who are too smart that forget, like, you're supposed to boo the bad guy. You're supposed to get angry. You're supposed to, get engaged about that stuff. And there'll be payoffs on the show for fans who want to see the good guy beat up on a bad guy and get a satisfying finish. You're going to get that. This is compelling. This is Empire Strikes Back. We're not at Return of the Jedi yet with these guys.
Absolutely. This is the first bite of the apple. You could get another 3 matches out of this.
Absolutely.
And everyone's going to be thrilled.
And what do you do with the 3 of them? Do you do a match with the 3 of them? There's a lot of variables you can work with here too.
Sami Zayn defending against Braun Breaker. I think everybody was surprised last month that Sami survived the Braun Breaker match. I think Braun's promo on Raw this week was some of the strongest work he's done. This story of he treats this seriously like it's a sport. It's this guy is talking about doing a comedy show, and we all know comedy and wrestling don't ever mix.
Never.
But and being a stand-up comedian, what
funny
a bunch
doesn't
of,
draw
what
money.
A bunch of
Everyone
losers.
knows that.
What
Funny
a
don't
bunch
draw
of
money.
losers.
Yeah.
So the idea that, hey, I took you lightly last time. I even put my hands down. That won't happen this time, and I'm going to rip your head off. Kevin, this is a pretty compelling rematch.
It's a compelling rematch. It's not. Sami Zayn is a valiant, I think, go-to guy. Almost, I would say at this point, a guy I don't want to see wrestle anywhere else but WWE. I think they really, really know how to present him so well, and he knows how to get the most out of a larger opponent and be that babyface in a vulnerable position. Braun Breaker is a big monster. He is everything Ryback was supposed to be. He's everything Goldberg was at one point. He is that type of archetypical, an action figure come to life, badass dude. That's what he's supposed to do. He's playing that part very well. I think he's doing some of the best work he's done in WWE, better than NXT, and that's kind of what you want when you get to the main roster, right? And he has some great dancing partners with him to cover any loose steps. This is his match to win. This is his title to win. This is his breakthrough moment. And Sami Zayn is the guy who's going to get him there.
So I think Braun Breaker's, this is the time you need to pull the trigger. You can't Lex Luger this dude. And it's funny because I fed this question to Dom, and Dom asked Braun this during the media thing today. I said the interesting thing about Braun Breaker is he's definitely a throwback to a number of guys, but the one that he's the most of a throwback to for me is Steve Austin, because he does not temper his act as a babyface or a heel. He is him. It's just a matter of who he's facing determines if the crowd is cheering or booing him. Yes. I was a little concerned last month going into the storyline that the fans were going to stop getting behind Sami because Braun is so much fun to cheer.
Mhm.
And I think that the audience, there's going to be a large sector of that audience that's going to be happy to see Braun Breaker win the Intercontinental title. But Sammy's such a compelling babyface, he's going to win him back the next night in some way, shape, or form. So I'm excited for that.
Yeah, and also that's the depth that WWE has now. You have guys who can take a loss and still be beloved and still feel validated. We talked about DIY. They could lose these titles and they're still going to be DIY the next day. That's how good you've made your characters stand out. That's how you validated a lot of people. Where they can win and they can lose, and it's okay. And I lend itself to how much they've just done a really good job with making the characters matter in the long run.
And in spite of that, next up we're to talk about LA Knight. It's LA Knight taking on Logan Paul. Logan Paul has had a rough 24 hours on social media. We are not going to get to that today, thankfully. But I will say, for as much as Logan is what he is, I do appreciate that he went back and tried to walk back one of his statements that he made and issue some kind of a correction and own up to it. Guys, maybe he's maturing a little bit. And I don't like this. He is a dastardly heel. But in all seriousness, it feels like this is LA Knights to win.
Yeah. If you're going to do an F finish with Punk and Drew, if you're going to do some stuff that maybe later on is going to feel like a schmoz in some way and end the show, you look at the card. We got to give him some happy moments. LA Knight, even if you don't think he's a developed character, and I know you're one of those guys that says he's not there yet. I've talked to other people that have been in WWE creative. And I believe I had a conversation with John Ryman, who wrote for WWE for quite some time, a few months ago. And John said, I think he's a talented guy. I know where there's an appeal, but I mean, this guy is over. He is over with casual fans. He's over with diehard fans. He works hard. Is it there for some people? Is it there for everyone? I think it's there for enough people that maybe in retrospect, putting this title on him is the right thing to do. You have a celebrity champion in Logan Paul who is already over-delivered on expectations. This guy should not be as good of a wrestler as he is. No. But he's an athlete and he's an entertainer and he understands that. And he checks a very unique box of getting young people to want to care about wrestling. And now you're going to have a guy who's 40 beating him. But this is a guy who's earned it a long, long time ago. I do think his longevity matters. And for LA Knight, who's been chasing this for a while, I do think he's earned this moment. Is it the right time? That could be debated. But also, how much time do they get? I think this is a match, by the way, that doesn't get a lot of time, based on everything else in the show. But LA Knight wins this title in Cleveland.
LA Knight wins the title. I would give maybe 12 minutes. I think this is an interesting one where I think Logan Paul is going to be the one leading the match and LA Knight following. But the advantage here, LA Knight is going to be great as the United States champion because of where they're going to go with this next. I feel like we're probably, if it's not this week, in the next couple of weeks, we're going to get an Andrade, Carmelo Hayes best of 5, best of 7. And I think the winner of that, which should be Carmelo, is going to be the next United States champion beating LA Knight by the time you get to Survivor Series. So I think LA Knight as a short-term transition champion makes a lot of sense. He's going to say, hey, I finally won a title here. It's as close to a boyhood dream as he's going to get. You're right. It's going to give the fans a little happy, joy, and we'll be good. I think another one of those that's going to be, they've found a way to shine this one, is Bayley versus Nia Jax. I don't think Nia Jax, she has improved for her. She has not improved for anybody else. So what they've done is you've taken arguably their biggest star that they have made right now in Tiffany Stratton, and having her ringside with the Money in the Bank briefcase makes this more compelling than it would have been otherwise.
Way more than on paper I thought it was going to be. I want Bayley to be a more exciting champion on SmackDown. It just feels like there's this ceiling on the reaction she's getting that just doesn't match her longevity and her dedication to the business and getting through injuries and all these different things. And I wish they would turn the corner. Nia Jax, as you mentioned, there are limitations, but she embraces reactions. I will say that her promos are underrated. I think she gets a reaction when she's on the microphone.
She does.
But you talk about a real fast rising star that people can that are young fans that they want to care about, young people. It's Tiffany Stratton. Tiffany is ready to be a star, I think. And it's you want to roll the dice on somebody who's young and say, oh, they're not there yet. Tiffany, it's the time. It's for lack of a phrase, it's Tiffany time. And I think she's cashing in here. I do think she's cashing in.
I don't think she's going to cash in here. I think that there's going to be some tomfoolery, if I can use a strong term. Apologize to our sponsors, but I think there's whoa, come on, man. There's kids. You're going to have something here where the briefcase comes into play. Like, I think Tiffany's going to tease at cash in, but it's not going to happen. And that's going to help the distraction where Bayley's going to roll up Nia and get the win. I don't think we're going to get a cash in because I think that it's going to be too much of a babyface pop, by the way. I think when Tiffany cashes in, you can save this for another time and earn it when there's so many other big moments that are going to happen on this SummerSlam. Just the tease, just her being there is more than enough. On the Raw women's side, Liv Morgan, Rhea Ripley, I've said it on here before. This thing could main event this pay-per-view.
Yes.
Not because it's PLE, sorry, not because it's we got to put a women's match in there. They have earned this. Guys, go back in your way back machine. Rhea and Liv were a tag team. Liv was betrayed by Rhea when Rhea joined Judgment Day. You have a long tail on this storyline here. The social media views for all the stuff with Dom and Liv, it's been incredible. And here, I think, is another moment where you're going to get a beautiful storyline moment of Dom turning on Rhea and aligning with Liv, because the WWE has told this really, really well. And the most important factor that happened, they have underplayed it, and I love that. Liv is the reason that Dom beat Ray for the first time ever. Yeah. She has elevated him in a way that Rhea did not, and he feels empowered in some way, and that's why he's going to fall into this trap.
It is a story, and this is for me covering the business with Sportskeeda, that I feel truly has captivated people. Like, they're in. And they have something they want to see. And even if the thing they don't get to see that they want to see happens, this other thing, betrayal, it is soap opera 101. The match is almost secondhand to, is Dom going to turn on? Like, I'm just talking about it like it's pure kayfabe. I'm not talking about like, this is babyface and this is, we're using it. No, I'm doing almost no analysis, because they're getting even the most diehard fans to just think of it like I'm watching a TV show. It is so many parts played well, everything paced out correctly. Rhea is a character who is pushing the envelope of WWE. It makes me think of, what are they going to do when they go to Netflix if you have someone getting licked on the cheek? And you have, Liv Morgan saying some very suggestive things, and just everything with Rhea is that terminology that tests the limits. Also, you have a character that appeals to a lot of young people in a very different way with those type of things. But I got to think, man, I just want to see what's going to happen with it. And I agree with you. I do think that Dominic is going to turn on Rhea, and this is going to be the fall of the Judgment Day overall.
This is going to be part of the fall of Judgment Day. It's funny because you mentioned the kayfabe element of it. It's like, we as fans are willing to ignore. We know that Rhea Ripley is married to an AEW star. I don't care. We know that Dom is married, and nobody's like, no, you're sucked in, you're bought in,
because they're doing such a good job,
and it's the fun of wrestling again. And what they're telling with Judgment Day, when it first started, I was so critical of how terrible that stable was, and it was such an albatross around the neck of Raw, and the fact that it has been able to expand and successfully fill so many segments on Raw, check off so many boxes, tell so many different storylines.
It's like a fourth of the show sometimes.
Remarkable. And it doesn't feel like it's overkill.
No.
Which the next match, Damian Priest and Gunther is another match that I likened it yesterday to what's going on in AEW with Bryan Danielson and Swerve. In both instances, you have a guy who won a tournament who's facing a champion where they did not have an interpersonal story. Mm-hmm. Bryan is still just win or I retire. He could be facing anyone. Mm-hmm. Gunther has pivoted this to, it is rich versus poor, haves and have-nots. And Damian Priest, who seemed lost in the woods for the last few months, over the last 3 weeks or so, he's putting it together. all that to be said, we're going to get our heart broken if you are Damian Priest fans, because you cannot deny starting the Gunther era immediately.
Like just business. This is me being probably too smart for my britches. WWE has this international expansion. Damien has played a role in telling the Latin American world that WWE will make Latin American superstars feel prominent, and there's other people there to do that too. And I think he's benefited from that. I don't think being a transitional champion in WWE is a bad thing right now, and I'm not saying that he is. But Gunther is just, he has a larger than life persona. He doesn't have to cut the best promo on the show. He has to cut a functional one, and he has to have that almost Andre-like feeling about him, where he does not have to do a lot for you to think that he could really hurt you, really hurt you in a very, very significant way. But the thing that makes me think he's winning the title is WWE's running Berlin. And the Bash in Berlin show is a big event for WWE to really establish the European continent as market 3, the continent 2, or wherever you want to go with it. And he's a huge part of that. I do think he'll be playing a significant role on that show. And this is a kind of parlaying into that. He's going to go into that show as a champion. He's going to wreck Damian. Maybe something with Finn Balor, but I don't think you can do too many, dusty finishes. This is a show that's going to be Titan versus Titan. They're going to go down to the wire, and Gunther is just going to chop him down. He's going to win this title.
We saw on Raw the Finn Balor Gunther match. The way that Gunther worked the sleeper hold, which is such an old school thing. Yeah. And my co-host on Working Stiff, Scott Chaplin, said it. It's like you felt that when he locked it in. Like you don't typically feel that when you're watching wrestling. It's like it's a rest hold. Like when Gunther does simple moves, they feel different. And I don't think this is the time that we're going to see the Finn Balor moment. I think they're going to save that for Berlin. I think you're going to get a rematch, because if Gunther wins the title in Berlin, it's babyface pop, and that's not what they want. Him going in as the champion, already denigrating Berlin. You can do a rematch with him and Priest. I think the crowd's still going to cheer for him because it's whatever it's going to be, but because he's kind of agnostic with the audience. It is, I am the best. I am the ring general. That is all that matters. Boo me, cheer me. I don't care. I think that fact that coming off of SummerSlam, Rhea is not going to be a champion. Priest is not going to be a champion. Dom is going to be off with Liv. The champions are going to be Jada McDonough and Finn Balor. And they've been the only ones who have cared about Judgment Day. They've been, anyone that challenges our rep, we're going to go after Jey Uso. We're going to go after Sami Zayn. We're going to go after Gunther. While you guys are off doing your individual stuff, you can still get a couple more weeks until the wheels truly fall off for Judgment Day. And Finn turning on Priest is a fun match for Survivor Series.
Yeah, great match. And you had Judgment Day in a big match at Survivor Series too, and Survivor Series, another big, state coming together and offering WWE money to do that. So good on them. But I think, there's more tooth in this, and strong show overall on SummerSlam here. There's just a lot of fun things to see on the show, to anticipate and get a payoff, and then anticipate another one.
There is still one match left, which I think is going to wind up being our main event for obvious reasons, which is Cody Rhodes defending against Solo Sikoa. The fact that you are getting Solo as a main eventer, and it's supposed to feel out of place within storyline, but doesn't genuinely feel out of place. What a testament to the success of NXT. Tiffany Stratton, Braun Breaker, LA Knight, Rhea Ripley. Obviously,
said that LA Knight.
I spit it out there. But Gunther, and then obviously, Solo. It is really, really impressive. I've said before, I think the finish that we're going to get here, you're going to see probably Orton and Kevin Owens come out to go chase off the bloodline, maybe even Jey Uso, since he doesn't do anything else on this show, to help their boy Cody. And then my guess, my prediction, I've had it for a while now, I'm just codifying it here. Dude with the hoodie comes out, costs Solo the match. It's Jimmy Uso. He goes up to the top of the ramp, out walks Heyman, out walks Roman, show over. I don't want any physicality with Roman Reigns. I think you need to have him at least appear, because if not, the story for this is going to be, why was there no Roman, in the same way at WrestleMania it was, why was there no Austin? So I think Roman there, but using Jimmy as the hand, and tease to what we're going to get to for Survivor Series. Otherwise, you're going to have Roman show up on Fox. I don't want to give Fox that rating. They're leaving.
We're done with them.
Yeah, we don't need those guys. So closing SummerSlam with that image of Heyman and Jimmy Uso and Roman Reigns, not helping Cody, but hurting Solo.
Yeah, the expectations for Roman to be there are through the roof. I did a predictions video for Sportskeeda Wrestling's YouTube channel. Go check it out. And that was a major, major thing we talked about when we were producing this. And I said, and this is the counter to this, is I don't know if you need Roman right now, because like once again, there's just so much content that WWE has, and there's so many more points to build to. I don't mind being wrong about it. But maybe Jimmy coming back, or maybe just Paul Heyman acknowledging that Roman is coming back is enough.
Yeah.
But you have so many casual people that just watch the pay-per-views and keep up with the product through a YouTube clip or this or that. And those are those lapsed fans, and they still want their big payoffs in their own way. So I don't mind being wrong about Roman showing up. I don't know if they need him right away, is what I'm saying. You know, if that's something they do when SmackDown moves over to USA Network, Roman returns, you know, and you can promote it and you can get a lot out of it, but also making people happy that they pay for a subscription service and they spend their Saturday night with you is also a big point. I don't mind it. I don't know if they absolutely 100% need it right now, but also the craziest thing that can come out of the show is Solo winning that title. You know, if Solo was to win that title, would that change the tone? Would that be like, all right, now Roman, you have to come back. I have the championship. I did not say belt. I have the championship. I have the thing you were supposed to keep and you couldn't keep it. And I brought it back to the family and you didn't. And I think that's a narrative you can do if you want to really, you know, drain the juice out of the berry for a little bit longer. But I agree. What you laid out is perfect. I would love to see that.
The argument for why you shouldn't have Solo win the title, number one, the narrative online will wind up being it's because Cody has been floundering as a champion, which is not a fair assessment.
No. And I don't know where that came from, because if you go to live shows, Cody gets Cody's super because action.
You know what it is? It's because a lot of the story with Cody, the narrative with Cody was finish the story. So for a lot of fans, he finished the story. We saw him win the title. It wasn't finish the story, was win the title and then defend it in perpetuity. So for some of the audience, that's kind of what it is. But I think the other key piece is we're going to most likely get Orton Cody at Survivor Series. They've been planting those seeds. They've been trying to tell that. You don't want to take that away from the audience. Solo and Roman, if they do a 3-on-3 or a 4-on-4, whatever it's going to be at Survivor Series, that's enough for that. And you just need needle drops between now and Survivor Series. You obviously don't need Roman on every week, but I think you at least kind of need he needs to be your post-credit Marvel reveal.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I think SummerSlam is going to be an absolute blast. This was an absolute blast. The first ever hour-long episode of Rumor.
I'm sorry if I had you going for an hour rambling about NDAs.
This is fine. This is what I'm here for. Thank God I don't bill by the minute. But in case you guys are unaware, Kevin does some work for Sportskeeda. I know he's been very subtle about mentioning it, but why don't you plug that at the end?
Sorry. Sportskeeda Wrestling. I'm with them all the time. You can check out the YouTube channel. We have it as a podcast as well. We also have the Wrestle Binge channel, a bunch of extra content coming on there. We'll have boots on the ground. Our very own Bill Apter is in Cleveland, Ohio. And I got to talk with Bill about the whole Shane McMahon thing, which was crazy this week. Just a bunch of different content. I'm busy myself, sweating and getting dehydrated at this thing called Lollapalooza for Q101, the top alternative rock radio station in the country. I will be broadcasting from Lollapalooza on Saturday afternoon, which you can stream anywhere in the world at Q101.com. And just busy with Roast Battle Chicago on the comedy side of things. We just had a great show last night at Zany's, and that's up on it's going to be up on our Patreon. We have a whole bunch of free stuff you can watch on our YouTube as well. Roast Battle Chicago. Plug.
Nice. I'm guessing Lollapalooza, it's Sonic Youth, Cypress Hill, Smashing Pumpkins, and Peter Frampton, right?
No, it's a lot of Dance Pop, Chapel Rome had a crowd of 130,000 people in the middle of the day.
And I'm going to say, who?
Yes, it is. She is somebody that snuck up on people real fast. She was playing like 1,500 seat rooms in November, and now is playing to, she's on Lady Gaga level suddenly in less than a year. But Killers, Blink-182 going to be there this weekend as well for people over the age of 30.
My frustration having never gotten a chance to see the Killers live is rearing its ugly head. But that sounds like a hell of a show. And obviously, given who my co-hosts are on Working Stiff, Roast Battles always going to be near and dear to my heart. You can check out Working Stiff, by the way, which is available now on iTunes, Spotify, and wherever you get your podcast. Myself and Scott Chaplin do some SummerSlam preview. We talk some AEW stuff, and we bust each other's chops because we're on here, and I can't say what it normally would be. But I will be back on Monday with Dominic D'Angelo, who's going to be filling us in on all of his exclusive interviews that he's getting right now. I know he's talked to Braun Breaker. I know he's talked to Jade Cargill. I know he's talked to Gunther. So we're going to get some of that. We're going to break down everything that happens on SummerSlam. We're going to preview Raw. All that's going to be streaming on WWE Creative _ish on X, the SE Scoops X account, as well as on YouTube on ad-free shows, Rumor and Innuendo, and Working Stiff. Kevin, thank you so much for stepping in today. If they want to follow you online, where can they find you?
You can follow me on the Instagram at KevKellum6. I'm about 20,000 followers away from 2,000. And I was told by a social media manager that platform plateaus are a big thing you got to hit. So get me to 2,000 followers on Instagram so I can get booked on some comedy shows. And those will be shows that I should have been booked on already. But no, go ahead and do that at KevKellum6 on the Instagram.
Awesome. Well, appreciate it, man. And on behalf of the almost internet famous Kevin Kellum, I'm Robert Karpelis. Best of luck in your future endeavors.
What about Billy in the CW?